1, 2,
Standing
go.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, possibly stream in. And we are back with you, and for tonight, most of the show will be dedicated to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the final part of the Guardians trilogy that is also part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, directed by James Gunn, with almost the entire cast carrying over. And I really enjoyed this film, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. So,
Likewise.
Yeah. So, as we go on, we're also going to be talking about some news developments, some current comics, but for right now, just strap in because it's going to be Guardians for a while. So, Steve, you're our go-to guy for film plots and all that. So why don't you tell us about this particular film in that context?
Okay, so this is the, like you said, the finale to the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. James Gunn started this. I think the first one was 2015, I believe.
I don't know. Do you know, I went to that preview. Remember where they showed the first 19 minutes of the film? And I went to that.
Really? Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm sure I can research a check-in of when that was. It was about 6 weeks before the movie premiered.
I mean, that was really cool. This trilogy, the fact that this trilogy got made is fantastic. But when we were first looking at the original movie, it was one of those teams. It was one of those character groups that I don't think the vast majority of people had heard of. Outside
I don't think the vast majority of
fans.
comic book people had heard of at that point.
No,
especially that team, especially this particular team of the Guardians, led by Star-Lord. This was relatively recent. I think those issues, or at least that team as it appeared, sort of happened around 2008, 2010. I mean, it was around sort of.
I think the series was
Reign of
2009. When was Annihilation? Because that's basically the seeds.
Yeah, that's basically what
2007 or so.
Yeah, 2007, 2008, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
that was kind of my, like where I dipped out and wasn't reading a lot of Marvel at the time. Yeah,
same. I did go back and right before the movie came out, I read all of that because I was like, who are these people? Like, I recognized a couple of them. Some of these characters had been around, previously in my previous life reading Marvel comics in the early 90s, but what James Gunn did is he made a huge number of fans, movie fans, as well as probably comic fans, love a really cool, kind of obscure cosmic team. Also introduced cosmic concepts to the Marvel Universe, which was, outstanding and just a real massive push from the left field. They really hadn't touched on that yet. But here we are in 2023 with the last movie of the three that he really wanted to make. He wanted to make a trilogy. He wanted to complete the story, have it happen, in a bookmarked kind of film series. And our Guardians are in a very different place from where we started years ago in the first movie. This is post Infinity War and Endgame. So things have kind of gone back to a new status quo. We saw that in the Thor: Love and Thunder movie. Nebula is taking more of an active role, while unfortunately Star-Lord is kind of stepping back and probably still mourning the loss of his love Gamora, who is still alive, or at least a version of her is now alive and out in the universe. And he's really suffering because of that. Groot has grown up over these movies. Obviously he started out as sort of an adult Groot in the first movie, was destroyed and grown back over the course of several different films, in the series as well as others, to his current version, which is kind of a bulkier, maybe late adolescent version of Groot. And also you've still got Rocket Raccoon, who seems to have kind of become a little bit more maudlin over the years, and all the things that he's seen and experienced.
Well, also keep in mind, him and Nebula were part of the Avengers during that 5-year gap.
They saw some shit.
He's seen some shit.
They were picking up the pieces of half the universe being, just wiped out, with a snap of the fingers. And so he's, he and especially Nebula, they have really been through it, and have matured quite a bit from just the goofy, crazy Rocket Raccoon from the first movie, and the, somber, I'm not going to really do anything but, and make a face Nebula. Now she's really got a leadership role going on. You also have a lot more of an interesting relationship and dynamic going on between Mantis, who is now a much more active member of the Guardians, and our favorite sort of lughead played by Dave Bautista, Drax the Destroyer, who is dumb as ever, but at the same time is still as lovable as ever. And this team has really been through it. We've lost several members along the way, several family members along the way. You've got Sean Gunn playing the new sort of captain from the Ravager group that Yondu, who died in the second film, used to captain, trying to take his place, with the fin and the arrow, and just really isn't getting there. And then, of course, you've got Cosmo, who is the dog Laika, basically, that was shot into space by the Soviets in the 60s, who is now a telepathic, leader who also has extreme telekinetic abilities, and is very sweet, but is still a dog. And they're living in nowhere and have rebuilt nowhere and brought back the populace there. But things aren't great. Things aren't going really, really all that great for them emotionally. And then also, we have some blasts from the past, sort of, with the Sovereign, who have decided that they're going to be making themselves known again. The Sovereign from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the Golden People. Turns out there's a little bit more to them than we thought, and this is where the big villain of this film, the High Evolutionary, comes in. We have Adam Warlock making his first appearance, and really sets off kind of first real appearance.
There's a
We've
cameo.
Seen his cocoon.
Yeah, there was a previous.
We've seen his cocoon before, but this is the first time we're actually seeing Adam Warlock in the flesh. But yeah, just his appearance in nowhere and his violent actions against Rocket Raccoon kind of, really kicked this film off into finding a way to save and, save the life of Rocket, who has been severely, gravely injured, and also hopefully thwart the strange machinations of the High Evolutionary, who all this time have been trying to create a perfect society by horribly mutilating and experimenting on millions of creatures, through his time. Of course, Rocket being one of them. So, lots of twists and turns, lots of craziness, and lots of emotion. I don't know about you, but I laughed hysterically at some parts, and I cried hysterically at others. I think this is one of the most emotional Marvel films that has been made and has been put out there, because we care about all these characters, but we're also seeing other sides of them that we may not have seen in depth before. What happens in this film, I think, if you don't react in some emotional way, maybe you're made of stone, or maybe you fell asleep. But this is definitely one of the better Marvel movies of the past several years, and a great, I would say a great sign that we're going to maybe get even more amazing films coming up. We've got Marvels coming up this fall that looks to be also a lot of fun. But I'm going to step back, and I did want to mention there's a lot of great actors in here, but there's also a lot of cameos that pop up. If you've been watching if you've seen any James Gunn movie, you'll see a lot of these same actors make little cameo appearances. You've got Nathan Fillion. You've got even Chukwudi Iwuji, who plays the High Evolutionary, was also in the Peacemaker series. So he has a prominent role there as well. Of course, you've got his wife that makes an appearance in one of the scenes. You've got Will Poulter, who comes in as Adam. This is his first, real MCU movie. And yeah, he got all super beefy and jacked for this, but you don't really see too much of that, because mostly he just... Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean he used to be kind of like the dorky kind of dude from what was it, the first
Narnia
Maze Runner movie and a couple other things too. Yeah. But he's looking all beefy and whatnot. But most of the time he just basically plays a big lunkhead with a massive amount of cosmic power. But yeah, I mean there's some great roles in here, and also Linda Cardellini has become one of the few actors who has two roles, or has played two roles in the MCU. She plays obviously Hawkeye's wife, and also the character of Lila in this film. So at least lends her voice to it. So one of the few actors who has played two separate roles in the MCU now. But yeah, I'm gonna step back and let you guys talk about how wonderful or how you felt about it. Maybe you didn't like it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll step in and kind of go first. So I adored the film. I thought it was great. It was a fun time. As is typical when I go see a movie, that's date night for Roger and I. My husband, who speaking of cameos, made a couple of them just a few minutes ago. But so we went to the theater. We got us a hot dog. Just had a great time. Just to be honest, I wasn't really sure what to expect from this. Where they were going with it. I've liked the last couple of things that I've seen James Gunn produce and direct and stuff. Obviously DC related. I thought they were fun. I think he's doing a really cool thing where he's going back to his trauma roots, and there are several elements in this where he really goes back to that kind of that gross, creepy horror factor with all the the practical effects. I think that's awesome. But that being said, I'm one of those people that and grown by all means deserve it. I hated Guardians 2. I thought it was terrible. It's like one of my least favorite films of all the slightly better than Iron Man 2, slightly below Thor 2. Somewhere in there. Just didn't care for it at all. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what James Gunn was going to do, especially this being his kind of swan song with Marvel. Ultimately, I was thoroughly entertained. And Steve, as you put it, ran you through the gamut of emotions. I did laugh. I did cry. There were these incredibly poignant moments. As I made the joke on Facebook and other places, the roboter made me cry. I never thought that would happen as a grown person. But yeah, no, a robot otter just yanked at my little heartstrings. I think the strong suit in all of this is ultimately that it's a story about family. And considering the number of team films that we've had from Marvel, the number of films that really, circle around family, be it, the Hawkeye series that you mentioned, Avengers being a pseudo family, a chosen family, the Thor movies having a big family element. This one to me is the most family oriented, especially with the concept of chosen family. And Rocket and them really get into, that's really part of Rocket's character throughout this entire thing is this arc where he is, kind of this lone curmudgeon dealing with a whole lot of PTSD and just early trauma that, goes through all of this heartbreak and heartache and, develops the family and taps in to become, almost a really close to something akin to a patriarch of the family, if not, just the big brother, if, Peter Quill is the patriarch. I thought it was a great end cap. Heartbreaking kind of build up to the relationship of Star-Lord and Gamora and the way that it exists right now. I thought that tension was really well done, and Zoe Saldaña did an amazing job just really driving that home and making you realize that this is not the character that you knew. This is not the character that we saw before. This is somebody else who has lived a different life and who has had different experiences since coming back, in the sense that she came back, which is not really what happened. But I thought it was vibrant. For a show, we really haven't gotten into much spoiler territory, I don't think, but for a film that, this franchise is well known for having soundtracks that do really cool things, right? And for a film that features, Counter Earth and the High Evolutionary and all of these, I don't really know how to put it in the sense of recreations, maybe, of other things and trying to find the perfect thing. I thought it was absolutely brilliant that he used all cover songs. I thought that was amazing. I'm sitting there listening, and there was something off about it. Bill, you're looking at me funny. Every single song in this film was a cover song. All
Creep
of them
wasn't.
were covers.
Creep wasn't.
You sure?
Yeah, it's Radiohead's acoustic version.
Oh, okay, that might have been it. But all of them were remakes from the original. Then, the vast majority of the songs were cover sons.
No, Since You've Been Gone, that's the Rainbow song. I'm pretty sure they were the first act to do that. You gotta understand, baby, I'm a music nerd, so
okay, yeah, and you may be true. There were a ton of cover songs in this, so I thought
there were
was
some,
great.
yeah. I didn't think you got it wrong.
But no, ultimately, I thought it was great. I thought it was a big win.
No,
so.
just like no.
Seriously?
Yeah. In the Meantime, it's not a cover. It was Hart's version of no.
I'm gonna have to check that because I could have swore they were all cover songs.
Yeah, no.
Okay, but hey, look, I tend to be wrong sometimes. A lot on this show. I could have swore they were all cover songs because they sound.
They
like
did have a lot of different mixes of the songs.
Maybe that's what it is.
Like I said,
the
Radiohead,
like,
that was like this really rare acoustic version.
Yeah,
it's from they had like radio sessions. So maybe that's where that's coming in.
Maybe that's what threw me off because none of them sounded like the actual originals to me. They all sounded like remixes or remakes. So
definitely that Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, that just
Reasons and
didn't really sound. So I think you may have touched on something.
Maybe that's it.
More like that it's more like remixes and stuff.
Yeah, that's got to be it then, because like I said, all of these songs, like I'm pretty well versed with the originals of them, and none of these songs did not sound like at least the radio versions of the songs themselves. So again, I mean, it's thematically, it goes into that. It's remakes of trying to do something else with an original strand. But yeah, so pardon me for again, maybe they weren't covers, but they were definitely not the thing. But ultimately, I thought the introduction of these the reintroduction of some of these other characters that we see were really cool. And just bringing it back like this, the comedic moments were super fun. There were some things that weren't in here that I was surprised about, but we can talk about those here in a minute when I've, got my foot out of my mouth from talking about cover songs.
Stop it. I'm not one that damns Guardians 2 as much as some other people. I think what I'm almost certain it was the case of, it seemed like these films look like they're so much fun to make that I don't think that they were aware that the balances didn't really gel with Guardians 2. I don't know if it was a case of trying to cover too much terrain, but I'm not someone who damns Guardians 2, but I will agree that it's like by far the least effective film of the three. And I will take some disagreement on the table. I'm going to put this disagreement on the table with Caleb. This was the first one of the three where I thought the needle drops were too much. It didn't need it. We've been through it before. And I did feel like there was just a bit too much of that. But this is also like really nitpicky. These films are, remarkably well cast, not just in the context of, the on-screen actors, but also the voice actors that are used in certain scenes. The scenes with Rocket and his friends really fucking affected me. I live in a very big pharma heavy state. And when I got out of that thing, I wanted to go up to New Brunswick and storm the research facilities. It was, and it's not, I know it's a joke, but it's also not funny because I do think apart from documentary footage, I think this is probably the most effective depiction of why animal experimentation and vivisection are wrong. And I mean, I'm still not okay. It still really, really affected me. But that also ties in with the nature of family and of chosen family, and that wonderful scene where they're playing tag within the, though the cages separate to, the duos. And I don't want to give too much away because there's something Rocket says. It's 2 words, and it leveled me, absolutely leveled me. And that this was part of a film that was so well balanced with action and comedy. It has been very well publicized that there was a point where James Gunn was removed from the project. And I can't conceive of a volume 3 without him. And apparently some actors definitely agreed about that. I think it's rare that you get a trilogy that ends on a high note. And that was one of the most wonderful things about this. We got happy endings. After all that stuff, we got happy endings. And not only that, but it also sets up for things that can happen in the future. With the Guardians team makeup at the end of the film, we'll just put that way. And then a certain character who will return, which I was not expecting. I almost thought that this was going to be the one where they're going to say or will not. I really expected that, and I thought that was a very inventive way of taking care of that. And like I said, it's just a wonderfully balanced film, and again, the needle drop thing was just, I think maybe because we've been through it before, and I think it was a bit more effective even in 2 compared to 3, that there was a point where I was just like, this is too much. Like the No Sleep Till Brooklyn, I was like, it didn't need it. It really didn't need it. Just the visual of them walking in that particular scene was enough. Yeah. But it's a very, very effective film, and I'm glad he had the opportunity to see the 3 through. I did see it in 3D. I know Steve saw it in 3D. Caleb, I don't know what format you saw it in.
The one that sounded like it was all cover songs. It's the format I saw.
He got a totally different soundtrack than the rest of us.
To be fair, I saw this movie on Cinco de Mayo. There were several margaritas that were
okay.
But it's unfortunate.
The songs did sound different from the
after
standard way
doing
that
the quick
we
Google research. It's really unfortunate that James Gunn didn't follow my idea of using cover songs, because every song in the soundtrack was performed by the original group. After my just
I gotta take a screenshot of my face when you said that.
Just my grounded proclamation that no, Bill, every song was a cover song. Actually, no song was a cover song. I'm just an idiot. I apologize.
No.
I used to date a girl, and her mother would always talk about old actors. Oh, and they died so young, and it turns out they were still alive. do have a counterpart to that.
That's me. I'm the died so young of the comic book bears.
Dick Van Dyke, and he died so young. But with the 3D, I do have to say that it's a situation where I felt like after like 15 minutes, you just forget it's on.
Yeah. You're
just kind of immersed in the story. And again, there's moments like the explosions and the credits. the credits are like, oh yes, this is 3D. I also thought the High Evolutionary was such a vile, despicable character that I was like, Rocket, it would have been okay to not be a Guardian for a moment there.
Yeah.
Like even, at least Thanos has an argument, it's wrong, but it's an argument.
I think James Gunn on that, I think he did a really good job taking the idea of the High Evolutionary to the degree that it is. I thought he did that perfectly because look, I've read a lot of stories with the High Evolutionary, right? What he does in the comics is it's eugenics, it's genocidal, right? But they continue to toy with him, and he's the bad guy, right? Like we all kind of agree that he's the bad guy. But James Gunn did a really good job. He's like, hey, this is going to be like the Marvel formula, one and done villains. This is going to be a one note thing. Let's show him for what it is. Let's take all of the glossy veneer of superheroic comic books off of this and just show you all of the warts on this character and just how, like you said, despicable. And what an amazing actor to pull that off. Like, I've seen him in other things and you love him in everything he's in. He's an incredible actor. Really just makes you hate him in this for the things that he does.
Well, there's no ambiguity with him, and this is actually a standout compared to a lot of the other Marvel villains. I mean, not every villain; some of them are just despicable through and through. And you're
but I think it's important to note with Kang, we heard more about how Kang was despicable than we saw it.
Right
here, it was in full force.
See it.
We
see it. This is not a Killmonger situation. This is not a Baron Zemo situation where there's like, oh, I get it. I understand how he got broken and how, emotionally he was in the place that made him turn into this. This is just the High Evolutionary is there to manipulate, to experiment, to, wipe out and start over again if he doesn't like those results. To just keep creating the perfect society because he just wants to be a god. He loves that feeling of being a god. Oh, by the way, we're in spoiler territory now, folks. So just warning, heads up. We'll note it.
I have so much respect for the movie bears with their format. I would never ever be able to stick to it. I never.
Oh no. We're like, okay, spoilers whenever, sometime, no warning. But I mean, this High Evolutionary has created societies. There are several that they mention. One of them, obviously, being the Sovereign. It's a society of perfect beings who he's a god to them. He created them. He can manipulate them. He can do whatever he wants with them. The entire population of Counter Earth. This is an entire planet, possibly of several billion animal people hybrids, living an existence that's a mirror of Earth itself. But it's to him, if it doesn't work, just wipe it out and start over. It doesn't matter if they're sentient beings. It doesn't matter where they came from or what stage of development they're in. If he doesn't like it, he can just get rid of it. And that's what he does many times. And it's implied that he's done that a lot before.
Which, in all fairness to the High Evolutionary, that's also the track record for the Judeo-Christian God that most of the people that we know worship. So,
Well, I mean, he's got a role model.
Yeah,
but
the Old. I mean, I can't imagine the Old Testament God not being a villain.
Yeah. But for some people, he was, I guess, especially the ones that got wiped out. Yeah. Those poor Hittites. No, anyway. It's just it is interesting watching him and even his subordinates. His subordinates, are sure they're scared of him and like do what they do because they may be terrified of him, but honestly, they're along for the ride. Miriam Shore, oof. I mean, I haven't seen her in too much recently, but she was perfect in this as one of his like hench people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the very end that she was like, oh my God, this guy is insane. But it was only because her life was threatened too. It's like, hey, we're all gonna die if you don't cut this out. I'm taking command, and he's like, oh no, you're all gonna die. Sorry. But this was a true villain, and just seeing him in the small moments, you really understood this, how sinister James Gunn was making him, and that's when he was working with Rocket and teaching him words, and seeing him go through equations and just seemingly caring, as like a mentor or teacher, and then immediately showing, I'm not doing this because I care. I'm doing this because I want what's in your brain. I'm doing this because I'm experimenting on you, and you mean nothing to me other than an object that I'm
You're an
developing.
IP.
So great. I mean, absolutely great turn. And I always have a problem pronouncing his full name, so I'll just say Mr. Iwuji. He is perfect at that nuanced evil, and which is very different from the character he played in Peacemaker, which was nuanced, very good, suppressing who he actually was, or or hiding who he truly was. He lays it all out here, and you hate him from moment one. But I think he did an amazing job.
Yeah. And I know one of my big criticisms was with Quantumania was that it felt, it was a film that felt like there were 37 different visual effects houses working on this. Yeah. There probably were about as many effects houses working on this one, but this felt so unified,
cohesive.
Yeah,
it had a unified vision and style, and that's James Gunn for you.
Yeah.
He knows what we want to see. We do have a couple people here who've stepped in. So we've got Dan Bryan. Hey, Dan Bryan.
Hey, Dan.
We were asking, or Caleb was asking, who the favorite Guardians of the Galaxy character was for this, and Dan Bryan came back that it is Mantis, and it's not a believe it or not. I believe it. Mantis, I think,
100%.
Tom Clemente. This was the best use of her character in all of the movies, he says, and I agree. I think she was fantastic. They gave her a lot to do. They gave her more to do than they have in everything since basically maybe the Christmas special. She had a lot to do. She's got
assault empathy. Like, she's got assault empathy, weaponized empathy. That's her. And it was also like the use of her. That's what I thought was great. Just the use of her in this as so many things, not only to transfer the more emotive and the emotional points of it, but just in battle, showing what she can do in battle. Like, she's not inefficient. She is good at what she does. And we saw a little bit of that, in the Avengers with Thanos when she did the whole sleep thing, but we got to see it in effect, like the full effect of her kung fu grip in this with, and it wins. I thought it was great.
She may not be the Celestial Madonna just yet, but at least she had enough,
but that's in there
right? This time that it's coming.
Yeah, I could completely see it in there. And I loved, again, we're not spoiling everything, but I loved her character arc, and I loved where it left off. I thought that was really great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have some other people joining us today. We've got John Westoff throwing out the horns. Hey, John. We've got James Figueredo. Good evening, handsome bears. Good evening, James. We've got John Runyon. Comic Book Bears Assemble. Hey, John. Dan following up here. Yes, she actually had powers. Yes, she actually used what she could do in this. She wasn't just sort of, I don't know, I feel things. Like, this was cool.
I was introduced to Mantis when I was 6 years old. And this was in Avengers, and this is when she married the ghost of the swordsman at the same time that Wanda and Vision married. And I was like, I just remember going to my dad's like, can you marry a ghost?
It was the 70s, man. Comics were weird.
There was a lot of drug use.
I was going to say, the cocaine back in the day was good. Like,
it was either good or really bad.
So we mentioned this, and Bill, you mentioned earlier, you brought up Kang as kind of a parallel, or not a parallel, to kind of a reference to the villainy in this. That is one thing that I thought I found interesting. Is this was a movie that yes, it looked forward in terms of what the Guardians can be later, but as far as overall Marvel Universe, the MCU, this was a looking back kind of film. There was no reference to Kang, and I really did find that particularly interesting, considering what what is happening right now in the world with that actor in real life, with all of the with some accusations and some behavior that's come out with Jonathan Majors. Part of me like it's too close, right? It's too close for them to have made any big changes in taking anything Kang related out, right? Or do you think that maybe they did take some stuff out? Because I thought it was interesting they didn't mention him at all.
It's been interesting because the two things I expect are a Kang reference, and I thought we would get. I mean, there's a big fucking head in the goddamn sky in Eternals. I mean, and there's been no let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe he just went away, even if that's the case, and it disappeared, but at least reference it. And, also with the DNA that Eternals and Guardians characters potentially could share. I wouldn't be surprised if whatever cosmic developments happen down the line that you see some hybrid of, because most of the actors are still alive, they can do something. But I don't know if something was taken out, but I also don't know if this would have been the best opportunity to, sow those seeds.
Yeah, well, it is fringe, right? Like it happens out on the.
It is
out
fringe, but it's also, I think it's a situation where the relationship with the director was precarious.
Yeah.
From the front office, and I'm just so, like I said, I'm just so damn glad it was him in the driver's seat and not some hack.
Well, and also this, I have to say, like for a cosmic movie, for a galactic, spanning film, this was a very narrowly focused story.
Mm-hmm.
It did not involve the entire universe.
Yeah.
It, coming down to it, it involved Nowhere. It involved the Orgos corporate flesh planet, and it involves Counter Earth. So those three locations, that's really it.
Yeah.
And it was very focused that this is a very personal situation that the Guardians find themselves in, and they didn't need to pull in any other heroes. They didn't need to pull in any other like cosmic beings. They just focused on High Evolutionary and saving their friend. And that was I think keeping that focus pretty narrow, I think made this one, a great movie, but also didn't really need to connect it necessarily to everything else that might be going on.
Yeah.
So it could have been a conscious decision maybe not to have any kind of Kang reference at the beginning, but there probably could have been an after credits.
That's like I thought that was notable that there wasn't.
And that, the fact that it was left out kind of was noticeable, but at the same time, did it need it?
Mm-hmm. And I also love that it's a full arc, because if you remember, Guardians 1 started on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In almost the exact same place. And it was a nice cycle. And I also just really appreciated, though it wasn't as robust or as emotionally affecting as some other parts, the Peter has a cycle, and he's basically falling apart over the situation with Gamora. And at the same token, there's somebody on Earth that doesn't even know he's alive. And why isn't that at the forefront for him? And I just thought it was, like I said, we got happy endings, and there was a point where you're like, something's not going to provide that for us.
You need it.
I was so expecting that this was going to be it for Rocket, for Drax. I mean, there was a moment there with Drax where, I mean, he had a hole in his chest. There was a possibility that maybe he didn't make it out of this situation. Gamora, it would have been something like maybe she starts liking Peter, but then something horrible happens to her and he loses her all over again. But between Rocket and Drax, because Dave Bautista specifically has said that he's done with the character. He doesn't want to return. I was like, are they going to kill him off then? Is this going to be like a really horrible?
Plus, you're so worried because actors love to play death scenes.
It's true. It's true. And I'm like, oh no, what are they going to do? But they gave him such a great, fun arc in this of his total character, but it's consistent. It was not out of left field that, he's the one who can speak to children. He's the one that is like, of course, these children. I speak their language. Like, they trust me. They they like me. I'm good with it because he's the dad. He's always been a dad. It's very consistent with who he was.
Well, I mean, the good news. I mean, number one, what didn't happen, but even if it had have happened, if Drax had have died, which he didn't, let's reiterate that, we wouldn't know it because if he's that still, we're just not going to see him. Yeah. He's going to be invisible because that's what Drax is when he's still. You can't see him.
We can't see him.
Yeah,
I'm not moving.
That joke was better in my head, but
it makes sense. It was a good attempt. Related,
because I've been IMDb exploring the actors and some of the people in this film. Do yourself a favor at some point, and this is for you. This is definitely for you. Google Benjamin Byron Davis, who played the character of Bledelsnort, because he is woofy in real life. In some really good
was that the guard that
I think so. All of the names were weird, but yeah, so I think that's who he was. But yeah, Benjamin Byron Davis is this man's name, and what a man he is. So
yes,
yes, told you.
Yes,
you are welcome, sir.
Who did he play?
Bledelsnort.
Bledelsnort. Yes.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pete Davidson was also in this movie, by the way.
Who?
Pete Davidson.
He was.
Cameo of the hideous little weird creature that Mantis lets free. I'm sorry, I wasn't making that sound because of you. It was something else.
Behind you.
Yeah. How did you? So we've talked about. How did you guys feel about Adam? How did you guys feel about Warlock in this?
Well, it's a mix. I felt his whole treatment is a missed opportunity because the Messiah aspect of the character in the comics is so far removed from the depiction, but it's still. I thought it still worked. And I liked that the second chance aspect came through him because we haven't seen much of him. Right. But what we saw was basically what puts everything in motion here. And it's not a good motion that takes place. So I thought it was okay. It was okay. I mean, I still think that there's a missed opportunity with that. Especially with Fantastic Four on the horizon and the cosmic elements that can be played with that. I just thought I don't think he's a minor character, and he's a minor character.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that you can do with Adam Warlock, but it gets so confusing and wild. But we've already introduced lots of the different little pieces of the Infinity Watch. Eros has shown up, and Puck has shown up. Not Puck. Troll has shown up, and
if anything, Drax, the character should.
We don't have Moondragon yet, but we might at some point.
Well,
I mean, Will Poulter should have been shirtless a lot more because he put in a work. He put in the work. He should have really showed it off and wore nothing but like little briefs the entire time. But,
so Dan Bryan mentioned it in our chat. He was like, curious what was the missed opportunity with there, and I do kind of want to dig into that. So. If you've read all of the Infinity Saga, if you're a long-time version of the Avengers, Adam Warlock was not this character that we saw. Like they took a lot of liberties, I think, with not only his just persona, but his power set and kind of his standing in the Marvel universe. And I think ways that they haven't done with other characters, or at least there's been a couple that I think that could have been more impactful and didn't. But number one, I like this character for the film. I want to say that. Yeah. I think this character was great for the film. If he hadn't have been painted gold and they hadn't have called him Adam, I would not have recognized this character as Adam Warlock, if that makes sense. Like visually it's there, but the makeup, the textual makeup of what makes Adam Warlock was not really present. It could very well be an evolutionary thing. Like I have no doubt that they're going to build him up, but at least for this film, in a sense that he is a creation, and he always kind of, we've already seen one aesthetic person with a growth, right? Like that's Vision. Like we've already seen that arc take place to a point. So I'm not sure that what I really wanted in this. But I definitely don't think we've seen the last of this character at all. Like I think that's pretty obvious. Like we're going to see a lot more of him. I just don't think that for this, there could have been a lot more of a just in film growth, a lot more of his grandiose kind of persona that was delivered forward. Yeah. And as Bill said, his status as literally a celestial messiah, get brought forward. And in this, he's just kind of a one note bullet. Like you point him in a direction and fire him, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. But also at the same token, they've set him up as a child.
They have, he's going to grow and learn, right? So
where they do have an opportunity to grow.
But that was just it for me. I mean,
and I think they could, if they tried to really delve into Adam, I think in this movie, it would have totally shifted focus and taken away from, I think, the heart of the story, which was, the core Guardians of the Galaxy cast and, their relationship to each other and to their past. And finding a way to close that, all the trauma and address all that trauma so that they can go off into the future, whether it's their separate ways or creating something new. And I mean, with Adam Warlock, it gets all, once you bring in Magus and, Aisha, I guess is technically her, but her is something totally different that just, is wild and out there. And then of course the whole Infinity, Gauntlet War, Crusade, everything involving Adam. We've already had the Infinity Gauntlet, and Adam was not part of that. So
right. So I'm just like, where are we going with this? But I mean, he's a blank slate, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. But he did. Adam Warlock in the comics did have a lot. Had some stuff going on with the High Evolutionary, where Aisha was working with the High Evolutionary to. Evolve Adam or do something, bring him back to life. I don't know, at some point. So there is that connection. So he didn't just pull these things out of thin air. But I think he created a very new type of Adam Warlock character.
Right. Which is cool because, yet again, this is not the comics. And I've made that point in other places too. This is not the comic. The comics are there. They've already been written. We can go read those. This is a different universe. Like this is just as different as the 616 is from 1610. It's just the film first. And I think that's really cool that we're getting to see a remake and a reiteration of these characters in a way that is unlike printed media, is time determinative because these actors do age. We are going to actually see these characters that can't be played by the same people anymore. And unless we want to get to kind of a James Bond effect, which there is, Bill's making a face for those at home. There is the whole facial the digital manipulation, like we've seen young Tony Stark, but I like that we get to go forward and have a just kind of almost like what Valiant originally had planned is these characters are going to age in real time and then we're going to move on, except for Valiant didn't do that. So,
well, so far we've seen them age in real time. The 5 years gets a little hinky, but I think, when you were saying like these actors are going to at some point be too old to play these characters, I think in this particular franchise, I think they'll just reboot. Yeah. I think at some point you'll see the end of this Marvel universe and then, something that comes after, because I think that's one element of the MCU that is a don't fix if it ain't broke situation. Mm-hmm. And I mean, could you imagine recasting Tony Stark at this point?
Yeah,
I mean, you just can't. These actors are so embedded with these. And there's always going to be somebody who's, what about because.
I personally want
whatever
I personally want them to lean into the legacy aspect of these characters. I don't need them to reboot. Like let's. I mean, what if the Marvel universe, this cinematic thing, keeps going on for another 60 years? Like we've got Ironheart. We could get another 10 to 15 years of Ironheart, and then we could get Iron Lad. Like they could really lean into the legacy idea of these characters and keep the franchise going. And we don't ever need to see a reboot or anything because that's what a lot of these characters are. Like you can't really do that with DC. I mean, you can to a point, but so much of the character tropes of Marvel characters are transferable because it's so much based in science and just kind of, other than radioactive spiders and Hulk and stuff like that. But, it's so based in that world that, we're going to see we could see Miguel O'Hara, and not in just the cartoon universe. We could see him, here. We can get Spider-Man 2099. And I think that's really cool, and I think that's something that they. I hope they lean into. Personally, I don't need them to reboot.
Yeah, I think at some point though, it's not going to work. When they have a failure after failure after failure, then
they'll do.
What I do need them to do is use actual cover songs when I say there's cover songs.
Yeah, I would say, we're looking at some a remix of a universe rather.
And they died so young. They died so young.
Dan
did a cover version
Bryan,
and then they died so young.
Dan Bryan here did mention who has been the least effective film adaptation of a character in the Marvel Universe. That's a pretty big question. I don't know if we've got enough time.
I don't know if that's like off the top of my head. Abomination was kind of redeemed in She-Hulk, so
yeah.
I wouldn't say.
What really hits me, villains, the leader.
Yeah.
Also in Hulk. Just.
Oh, and I mean, I've literally got a leader statue sitting up on my or not a leader statue, like an action figure. I don't have a whole lot of action figures, but I mean, I love the leader, and I love the Hulk mythos. Yeah. I'm trying to.
I'd have to think about that. That's not one I could.
Whiplash.
Howard the Duck.
Outside of the Marvel universe.
That's a Marvel film adaptation. Yeah.
Well, I mean, technically, we've seen Howard the Duck, so
Howard the Duck in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Ever seen by an actor. The worst performance I've ever seen by an actor is in a Marvel comic book movie.
Which one?
And that's whoever plays the younger brother in Punisher Warzone.
Oh yeah.
Is that right, brother? Yes, brother.
Malekith. Malekith is a villain that I thought was terribly misused. I would have liked to have seen more out of that.
Barely there. He was barely there.
There's some characters that I absolutely adore that the perception, the characterization of is so different. Like one of my favorite villains of all time, and it's not just because he's like the ultimate bearish, soulish ginger, is Dr. Faustus. Yeah. Because I think for the Man Out of Time, Captain America, his ultimate villain would be one of the mind and not of the body. And so that's why I have that, I want to see hot bear daddy, soulish ginger, Dr. Faustus, and not what we got in Agent Carter. But I don't think that was wrong. I don't think that was a terrible reinterpretation of it. Just not what I would have preferred to see. I know it's somewhere there. I don't know, because even when I'm thinking of something, I'm like, oh yeah, but I did kind of like that in the end.
Taskmaster,
the Inhumans collectively.
Oh, I love that take on Taskmaster.
Did you really?
I loved it. I
did like. Yeah, really I did like Taskmaster there. I was just saying the Inhumans.
Oh, dude, Karnak. Karnak was like, well, there was so much about the Inhumans that they didn't get wrong.
Medusa. I'm going to go with Medusa.
Yeah, like
Medusa. Yeah, shave Medusa's head when that's her power. Is her hair.
But
budget, just have her walking around Earth with a buzz cut.
I feel like the budget was the real villain of that.
The budget and the writing.
There was I think like a 9-month gap between the pilot, the shooting, and then what happened later, and you can tell the difference. I mean, it's like no craft services. You're in Hawaii, but
bring your own bag lunch.
You're probably at a Days Inn or something. It just felt really strange. I'm gonna go with Medusa because I just felt that the what makes that character special just was not present. Literally was not present through it. Yeah.
I want y'all to think about how great the universe would be where James Gunn makes the Guardians, or not doesn't make the Guardian, makes the Medusa, the Inhumans trilogy. Think about what that could be.
I don't think he's right for it. I don't think he's right for it at all.
Oh man, I could see that being weird and funky and awesome.
No.
I think that the aesthetic is definitely not up his alley.
Yeah,
technically, maybe later in Humans when they start really, post Mist taking over the planet kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
The cover version era of the Inhumans.
the cover version. In
Era
Inhumans.
of it.
They died so young.
They died so young.
Do you guys want to get into Guardians comics?
Sure.
I think we
Sure.
should. I think we should.
Okay, Caleb, of the comics that we picked, you're the one that deals with the actual present day team. So why don't you go first and then leave the future for the other two here?
I will. When Bill had the really great idea of a novel idea, even of talking about a Guardians comic on the night that we talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, it took me aback for a second. So real talk, and I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here. I don't read a lot of Guardians, very, very little Guardians at all. And I had to I sent Bill a text. I was like, dude, I legit don't know if I have any Guardians. I'll have to check. And I did. I actually had a couple of issues. I had more than I thought. I was kind of surprised. I was just like, what box did I buy that those were hiding in for some of the older stuff? But I grabbed this out of my long boxes upstairs. And this is Guardians of the Galaxy volume, I think like 6 or 7-ish. I forget what it actually is because Marvel and their renumbering and stuff. But it's legacy numbering 175. As you can see from the cover that is being shown by our dearest Steve right now, this is written by Al Ewing. In this particular run, this actually is issue 13. And this is the arc that starts off, I believe it's the first art by Juan Fragrieri on this run. I could be wrong. I've got the number 12 somewhere else. I thought that was actually Juan Cabal who did the first 12 issues. I could be wrong, but somebody else can Google and double check me while I'm talking. But I was sitting there wondering, I was like, why do I have a random section of a Guardians of the Galaxy volume? And then it dawned on me as I went and grabbed the cover. I was like, oh, because it's got an epic ton of the Young Avengers in it in this particular rerun. And it was being written by Al Ewing, who at the time, this was also, again, I'm not sure the dates, but this would have been when he was writing Immortal Hulk. And, Al Ewing could do no wrong at this point. And quite frankly, Al Ewing has done very little wrong, period, ever. Now that I go back and read his stuff, the man is a really good writer. And it's fun when you read some of his stuff. If you were to lay out Immortal Hulk, the Defenders, Guardians, all the other stuff that he's done, there is a lot of thematic crossover that I think a good friend of ours would call it conceptual continuity, to quote Mr. Vince Bonavilla. And so this book actually gets started in a really, really fun place. Prior to this, the Guardians had been out in space and they'd actually teamed up. Hercules was a member of the Guardians and they'd fought the Olympians and shenanigans happened and it was weird and crazy and awkward, as a good Guardians book should. As this title kicks off, the team is split, and they're actually being led by Richard Rider, Nova himself, Nova Prime.
I was going to ask who the hell is Nova at this point.
Yep, it is Richard Rider, Nova
Sam,
Prime.
That looks way too old to be Sam. So
yeah, no, it's the grown man himself, and he is leading the team. At this time, the Novas are disbanded, and actually in the issue previous to this, he's talking to some of the people who control some of the more cosmic things. And they're he's like, no, I'm not. The Nova Corps are done. We're Guardians, and we're not your space cops. We're superheroes. So we'll be where we needed. Where we're needed. And that's kind of where this team is. And they're actually split up into 2 teams, but I'll get to that here in a minute. This book actually kicks off on Hala, or at least what's left of Hala. It's the Throne World, and at this particular time, the Kree Skrull Empire is unified under Hulkling, and Wiccan is the prince consort, or so to speak. But that's what's happening. These group of things, these creatures, they're called progenitors, and they actually come from a place called the World Farm. They're very celestial-like, right? They show up, and their whole gig, again, to tie into what we talked about earlier, is experimentation. They are trying to create something perfect, and they experiment, as you might imagine, on what they consider to be lesser species. So they show up, and they're starting to grab all of these Kree and Skrull, picking them up. They gas them with stuff. They mutate, do all this weird stuff, and then they just discard them because they see what they can do. Obviously, this is a little problematic for, a sovereign of a global empire. And they jump into action. Hulkling and Wiccan are on their way to protect Hala Of course, if you've read the book at this time, Hulkling's kind of guard is including the Super Skrull and some of those folks. So he's got a team of his own. While this is happening, Super Skrull reaches out to Nova. It's like, hey, dude, you got to get the Hala. Shit's going down. They need you. Nova does the whole thing. He's like, hey, I'm not your watchdog. We do what we want to do. We'll get there. But also, we're on the way. It's 8x8. We'll get it. But hey, pay attention to this little planet out on RimWorld where the second half of our team are at. The second half of the team being, Wendell, Captain, old school Marvel himself. You've got Phyla-Vell and you've got Marvel, the kid from, Wendell, who's Quasar. You got Marvel, the kid from Young Avengers. They're exploring this place with Drax. As they start to uncover stuff, they realize that out on this really weird rim planet that was only discovered a week ago, not only is it habitable, there appear to be a cult of fire-worshipping Skrulls just kicking it on the planet. That seems weird. That's probably a thing that should worry them. And it turns out it is. Meanwhile, back on Hala, is it Hala or Hela? Do we know? I don't know. Back on Hala, shenanigans have gotten worse. The team is kicking into action. They have the Guardians have got there, and now this is Richard Rider with your traditional Guardians team, right? Rocket and Groot, Star-Lord is there, Gamora is there. And they are doing all of these really cool things to just dismantle the progenitors one by one. There's 4 of them. They all have this thing where like they have floating heads. Again, a little bit of a spinoff of the Celestials, but they inevitably just break these dudes up. And where they're left at is they're kind of confused, right? Like this doesn't seem like a random thing that the progenitors would have showed up there. It also doesn't seem like a random thing that the second half of the team is on a planet that is just kind of brand new, just discovered, but also might have a fire cult of Skrulls on it with a witch Skrull person who is talking about bringing in something from the cosmos that's going to eat the world in a very Lovecraftian kind of way. Alarm bells are going off. So as on Hala, they finally defeat the bad guys, and Wiccan and Hulkling have a really cute moment, as they are apt to do. Made my heart warm and fuzzy. And then they go and they talk to Richard and the rest of the crew. They start to realize, hey, something's up. Like something has sent these creatures here, and it's some weird blend of magic and science. And who do we know from Marvel that has a blend of magic and science, and also probably has a god complex? Well, at the end of this book, spoilers for a book that's a couple years old, Doctor Doom shows up in space because he's Doctor Doom, and that's what he does. I thought it was super fun. I'm not used to seeing Doom off-world. Like, it was neat seeing him show up in this. If you've read past this, he does some weird stuff where he, like, switches bodies with a few people. All kinds of craziness ensues. It is wacky. It is weird. And I had a lot of fun with this. I actually thought these covers were really cool because all of the, especially for Wiccan and Hulkling, they are appearing a little bit older. Brett Booth, I think, did this particular cover, which is cool to see. But no, man, I thought it was fun Guardians books. And again, we got to see Quasar. We got to see Phyla-Vell, Marvel off doing their own thing, teaming up with Drax, finding weird fire people on stakes. I don't know. So it was fun to dip into. And I thought it was really neat, especially considering where these characters are now. I like going back and thinking, as we read these books, like, what is this saying about the world? What is this saying about the Marvel world? And it's interesting, especially where these characters are now. The advancement of sovereign nations and what that means, all that fun stuff. Also, shout out to Juan Fagrieri. If you've never seen his art before, it's right at home. There's a little bit of Aaron Cooter vibe in there, some Sean Isaacs, that kind of, those are his contemporaries. Fantastic work all around.
Yeah. Did you see Aaron Cooter's going to be on Daredevil?
I did. I'm excited about that. He's an Arkansas guy, so I'm always happy to see him.
Yeah, I just I'm so used to him with big.
Yeah.
To have something that's going to be more street is going to be interesting. Yeah.
You mean big like that?
Yeah.
But no, that's my Guardians, man. It's like I said, modern team. But we get to see Wiccan and Hulkling. We get to see a lot of the Young Avengers, which is why I tapped into it. It's a fun arc. I highly recommend it to anybody who's ever read it. If you want a more contemporary take on Guardians, Al Ewing, man, he's a good bet. He's a good bet. Like, 80% of the time, he's going to win 100% of the time.
Okay, Steve, over to you.
Well, if you wanted me to go, because I'm going to go way back to the early 90s.
And yet, into the future.
And into the future. The 30th century, I believe, or 31st century?
31st century. It's just like the Legion. It's 1,000 years in the future.
1,000 years.
Exactly.
And what I did was I dug back into my my long box of early 90s comics that I collected when I was a kid. I found some interesting things about it. Least of all, none of them are in any discernible order. That's Steve. So, I mean, flipping through hundreds of comics, trying to find the right 4 comics is kind of tough when they're not in any order. But I found them. So we have back in 1991, Marvel, actually in the early 90s and late 80s, Marvel was really good about having regular annual events with the different annuals. They would group different, types of books together, probably mostly by editorial group, and have a multi-part story through those summer annuals. And the one in 1991 that involved,
some are terrible.
Oh, some are absolutely
Some are
garbage,
terrible.
but some are fun. And this was one of those fun ones. This one reads like a Silver Age action story. There's so much explanation, so much backstory. Every other panel has a, editor's note, and everyone introduces each other in the first page with their name and power set immediately. So you know exactly who everyone is within 2 pages, who these people are, what their powers are, and what they mean to each other. It's great. But in this one, it starts off in the Fantastic Four annual, number 24, with basically a flashback and a huge backstory flashback about the Korvac saga, which, if people remember, the Korvac saga was kind of uncomfortable in the, I'd say, like, maybe, was it Avengers 170-ish? Several issues around there, where a advanced, a human from the 31st century is taken by the Badoon and turned into a sort of like cyborg supercomputer. After being defeated by the Guardians of the Galaxy, Korvac escapes, finds Galactus's space house. He's got a little space house out there, and takes some of the power cosmic for himself. He transforms into essentially a godlike, more human-looking being, and teleports himself back to the 20th century, where he decides he's going to... Yeah, it's a Long Island. He's going to shack up with some woman who's also sort of like, a semi-cosmic god as well. Just being whatever. Just do whatever, because it's Long Island. And
he really does go to Long Island. It really
But, one thing leads to another, which is always how this happens. And the entire Avengers and several other people attack to take down Korvac. He kills everybody, by the way. So all the Avengers have died. But at the last minute, Galactus comes home, does a little, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and says, somebody's been stealing my cosmic porridge, and takes out his ultimate nullifier to destroy Korvac. Korvac senses this, completely redoes the last 5 minutes, so all the Avengers are still alive, takes his cosmic power and sends it off into the ether to be reborn at some time in the future, and then kills himself, presumably. And that's where this Korvac quest starts. The Guardians of the Galaxy in the year 3000. These are Starhawk. These are it's Starhawk. It's Mannix. It's just the classic. What? Martinex, not Mannix. Yeah. Martinex. Charlie 13.
Charlie 27.
We're talking about 27. Oh, dang
Charlie
it.
27.
Oh my gosh, I keep getting the names wrong. This is
yes, I think you're thinking of
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But anyway, so anyway, they're fighting in the future. They're fighting the Badoon like they usually do. But Starhawk has a weird moment where he's like, "Stop, everybody! Stop doing what you're doing." the future is missing. The future's gone. Something has happened, and it has something to do with Korvac 1,000 years in the past. And so they just kind of like skip out on this giant intergalactic battle between the freedom fighters and the Badoon, and head back in time, like they do, to find out what happened. They see the situation with Korvac. They see where his essence has sort of flown out from his body right after the the defeat of the Avengers, or rebirth of the Avengers, because they're resurrected, and decide we need to follow this. We need to stop Korvac before he gets to the 30th century and takes back Galactus's power, and then basically rewrites history by making sure that Galactus never sends out his ultimate nullifier beam. They, entreat the Fantastic Four, who show up with a bunch of their super technology. They do all sorts of crazy things, and somehow figure out that Korvac's essence, his cosmic power, has found its way to some barefoot lady in the outback in Australia who's just been wandering around from Sydney. And they have a big epic battle. And if you see the cover here, this little lady in the tank top has defeated the Guardians and most of the Fantastic Four somehow. It is such a wild book. This is actually this was written by, let's see, Al Milgrom, who also did the art. This is just great. But of course, the annual, there's plenty of other stories. This continues through Thor, the Thor annual, a Silver Surfer annual, and I have the covers here because they are all fantastically early 90s. The Silver Surfer story is actually great. Really love it. Ron Lim and Ron Mars were such a great team in the early 90s on Silver Surfer. And then, of course, ends in the Guardians of the Galaxy annual number 1 in 1991. I do have to say, some of the battle scenes in this, throughout the 4 parts were great. This is one of my favorite splash pages from this. You've got Silver Surfer with the cosmic bands in the 26th century fighting the Guardians of the Galaxy, because Silver Surfer thinks that he's protecting sort of a peaceful, paradise world that's actually been made that way because another ancestor or descendant of Korvac has gotten his power. It's fantastic. They bounce around through time. We've even got the Time Variance Authority makes a couple appearances here and there. It's got everything. It's fun. It's goofy. It's a slice of Marvel history and Marvel storytelling that at this time was starting to change. We're going into sort of like the Heroes Reborn era just a few years later. And the storytelling and the art and all of this is going through that transition away from sort of the classic style of Marvel storytelling that developed in the 70s and 80s. But I had a lot of fun with this. It's goofy, it's ridiculous. I recommend it. You get to see sort of the classic Guardians of the Galaxy 3000, some of which also did have cameos in Guardians Volume 3. Sylvester Stallone playing Starhawk, I believe. Very different version of him.
The second time we've seen them, right?
Second time,
because they did appear in the first one as well. But I thought this was a ton of fun. If you can find these, if you have the Marvel Infinite app, you're going to be able to read this free. But it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of also back matter and some great extra stories in each of the annuals for the expensive price of $2.
Steve, we both spoke about books with nega bands. I'm excited about that.
Yes, those cosmic bands, those nega bands, they're awesome.
Oh, they're
great. Awesome. I used to read Quasar at this time period too, so I love those. We've got James here with a couple comments. Days of Future Present, Atlantis Attacks, and High Evolutionary War. Ah, yes, the early 90s.
And what was Days of Future Present? Was that the one with Ahab?
Yes, that sounds about right. With Ahab and the dogs.
That one is fantastic. Atlantis
also...
Attacks La Bamba.
Garbage.
High Evolutionary War is fun because there's there's an Avengers team that isn't really the Avengers, and High Evolutionary War is kind of fun.
James also mentioned my favorite crossing over in the X books the same year, Kings of Pain, where some like S&M mommy takes her like super chubby dude around to like suck energy out of mutants. Really exciting.
Wait, Atlantis Attacks, was that the Terry Austin book with like the set crown, the serpent crown?
Yes, it involved the serpent crown and all of these women superheroes being hypnotized.
Yeah, no,
that's
wives
the
of
Avengers
sex.
West Coast. That's just like one issue.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's actually
the-
in the Avengers collection.
The Iron Man annual in that is one of the worst comics ever. Atlantis Attacks, and that's the thing is like it, you know, there's some things where you like, oh, read it in the context of the times.
It was John Byrne. That's how I know what it is. It's John Byrne.
It sucked back then.
Yeah,
it'll suck now.
That was in the John Burns Avengers Omnibus. I actually read that earlier this year. That's why it's ringing bells. I had to like figure out where I knew that from.
Oh, baby.
I mean, I had Namor. It can't be that bad.
Well,
Namor's in the Iron Man annual, and it's bad. It's bad.
But that's the bright spot, is because Namor's in it.
No.
And if you want depressing, read the What If issue that talks about Atlantis Attacks. That was like, it ends up with all of the women superheroes turning to half snake people and just giving birth to snake babies for all eternity.
Uh,
Like Marina, were they like Marina type?
Storm.
So they'll become like
Storm, Cersei, the Wasp. I think they all just like turn into She-Hulk. They all just like turn into baby.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep, that's John Byrne.
That was a bad What If, but it was a bad story. So, but yeah.
Okay, my book does not have mega bands, but it does have connections to the stories you're talking about. So if you want to put up the graphic, this was the most recent, as far as I know, the most recent updating of the Future Guardians team, which was actually the original Guardians team that premiered in 1969. And there was actually, it went on for like a good amount, like 70 or so issues that Valentino at least started just before the annuals that you provided. Steve, were you a reader of that book then?
I was, and I think it was it Valentino or Starlin?
No, it was Valentino. That put him on the map to become an Image contender. And there's actually another tie to the creation of Image Comics that Guardians of the Galaxy factors in. So I'll give you some trivia as we go on. But Guardians 3000 deals with the original team, as you see there. Vance Astro, Charlie 27, Starhawk, Martin X, and Yondu. It takes place in the 31st century. Though we've seen these characters before, there's something a little bit off, though, as we're going through this. It's the same situation. The Bardoom have taken over a lot of the universe. And what the Guardians are going to do is they liberate a particular patch of Earth. And one of the characters that they liberate is a young lady, actually a girl, I would have to say. And let me just see if what was her name? Gina Drake. Okay. And there's something different about her. It turns out effectively the concentration camp that she was in was basically put up so that she could be exterminated. And as the Guardians rescue her, they know that there is a purpose for her and there's an importance to this girl, but they're not exactly sure what it is. So they attempt a big rescue. She effectively joins the team, and then they're murdered. They're all murdered. And then bang, like that, they're all back. So Shades of Moira, Gina Drake relives again and again her meeting the Guardians and her demise with them. But on top of that, though, she comes to know each time that she comes back, she knows a little bit more about what happened. So they get to a point where they don't all die in the battle that they usually die in, and the Guardians try to bring together whatever resistance they can that still lasts in the universe, so that there's, some remnants of the Kree, there's the Shi'ar, So we do see Gladiator. We do see the descendant of Star-Lord. And the Bardoom's expanse is so expansive that the negative zone is actually worried that it's going to move over from the positive zone into there. So you have you have Annihilata, the Annihilus's descendant, come to this effectively the summit, and there's a very mysterious character, the Stormfront, and it's just one guy, and he describes himself as a herald, and that does tie into something later, and he's a herald of an area called the Hunger Pit. So the Guardians are trying to get people together, and some people like the Star-Lord descendant immediately come on board, but then they're attacked. And as the story goes on, it turns out that this Gina Drake is very important, and she comes to realize that she's very important when they do visit the Hunger Pit. And who's there at the Hunger Pit? You've put together the Herald. It's Galactus. The Hunger Pit area is guarded, though, by the last member of the Nova Corps, who is Rael Ryder. And they find out that Gina Drake, in the multiverse, there's only one. There's only one. There's counterparts and variants to almost everyone else, but for some reason, there's only one Gina Drake. Now, unfortunately, we never really find out where this goes, because this was a series that was canceled after 8 issues. It was intended as an ongoing. It tied into Secret War at the end, and tied into the Secret War Korvac War. Remember, they with the battle zones and war zones that they would have these miniseries that kind of relive stuff. So it ties into that. It's written by Dan Abnett, who was the writer with Lanning on the Guardians of the Galaxy series that came out of Annihilation. That basically what we saw in the movies is, that's the core DNA that gave that particular franchise life. I have to say, first of all, you really notice without DNA. It's a very different vibe. It doesn't feel as energetic, I have to say. And I think Lanning has been a little bit smarter in that he mostly co-writes with other people like Ron Mars. And have they ever really commented on their breakup? Because apparently it was pretty acrimonious.
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not saying a whole lot.
Yeah, it's surprising because it seems both of them are pretty mum about the distillation of DNA. But this series has a lot. It had a lot of potential, and you saw these remnants of the Marvel universe that we know come in. There's a group called the Stark, and these are sentient Iron Man costumes that have basically created their own society and have their own protectorates. Again, I've mentioned that you do have Star-Lord and Nova descendants, and I do wish that at some point there's a version of the Future Guardians that just goes full on tilt Legion of Superheroes. That they bring in legacy characters from here and there, and the only thing that they do have in common is the time lanes are pretty, kind of lax, and they go back and forth, with present day and the future. But you can see here it's one of 5 covers of the series that were drawn by Alex Ross. It has had a lot of promise. Now, I just want to mention some of the ties to the books that you two were talking about. Caleb, you mentioned Quasar. Do you guys know the connection from Quasar to the Future Guardians?
Well, you said it doesn't have nega bands.
It doesn't have nega bands, but he's a daddy. Quasar eventually gives birth. Eventually becomes the father of Starhawk.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, what about Starhawk's wife? How does
The
she?
one-
Well,
one who
Starhawk's
knows?
sort of wife, sort of sister, Alita, and they do pay attention to that, because when the first death happens, Starhawk's a male. When the second death happens, Starhawk's a female.
Yep.
So that whole thing where they share the power and their wife, but it's sort of like the adopted sister, like that. Starhawk's like an X-Men situation where you really need Wikipedia to follow the history. It's
Mhm.
really
Well, I mean, it happened post Annihilation too, in the Reign of Kings, where Starhawk
Yeah.
showed up in the, I guess the modern day Guardians of the Galaxy team,
Yeah.
and was constantly switching between male and female,
female.
uncontrollably. Yeah. Oh yeah. He's a wild character. She is a wild character.
Yeah.
Bill, did you ever read a series from the 70s called Titans?
Titans.
Yeah, there was a Marvel series. It looks to be an anthology, like it was a collection of reprints called Titans. That
Would have been the British. Yeah, those
Okay.
were just Marvel reprints of the American books.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, they may have even been French. Looking at some of these covers. Anyway, like there's one from '77 that collects like Skull the Slayer #2, Doc Savage #3, Marvel's Presents #3, and the Champions #3.
That's got to be the French one.
Just
Yeah.
random things. Yeah, but apparently like all of these really cool Starhawk stories show up in that. It's like Marvel Comics Presents, but it's called Titans. Interesting.
Yeah, so now for my connection between Starhawk and the Image universe. When again, Starhawk is this really convoluted origin story, and there's a point where he's sharing the power with Alita, who's the female Starhawk, and then he's about to die, but then he siphons off all her power, and that's in Valentino's run. So the editor at the time was Tom DeFalco, and when this version of Starhawk was reborn, Valentino wanted to call him Shadowhawk.
Okay.
And it was DeFalco who said, that's a really cool name. If you give it to this character, at some point down the road, he's going to go back to being Starhawk. That's just the way comics run. Save that name for a character.
Okay.
And from that one conversation, he basically developed Shadowhawk.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
This is cool.
We do have another person who's just joined. Eric's Reloaded, hand pink waving. Well, hello, Eric.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. And yeah, James agrees. That is wild, Bill.
It's all connected. It's all a connected universe. It's all connected.
All of it, man. All of it.
It's all
Follow the red strings.
Yeah. But I think for people who are used to modern comics reading, this is not a bad introduction to the future Guardians.
Yeah.
Especially if you like Yondu. I mean, like if you want to see more of that character and stuff and where it kind of comes from. Different character than what you're going to see in the film, but
yeah, I think it's a little frustrating with Yondu because when he was first introduced, one of the characteristics of the character was he was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
He was very simple-minded.
He was kind of it was almost primitive in a way.
He was primitive, almost like a child.
Yeah.
And it would have been interesting if they went that route, and that kind of really got abandoned in the Valentino run, where he eventually has like a relationship with Nikki, and and Nikki's also in this team, which is like the dumbest name for a character ever. She's Nikki.
She has fire for hair.
Yeah.
Yay!
But this Nikki is also pretty badass. This Nikki's pretty badass. But when you're reading it, you just feel that they had much bigger plans. Beyond the 8 issues that we got, and just a much bigger role for these characters, because again, they could be the Legion of Superheroes for Marvel. They really could be. Of something that anchors to the future that you can use in tie-ins. They still do, but I don't know. I think just because that's how I got to know the Guardians was through the future version. And I thought with this, you had like a kind of an ideal situation because the market they thought would support, 4 or 5 Guardians books at a time for a short window, and didn't turn out to be the case. But I'd like to see what happens next with the future versions.
Yeah. Cool. And that's with Guardians of the Galaxy, especially when you have like the two sets of teams. You have the present day Guardians of the future Guardians. I think there's such a wealth of weird histories between the two of them to really mine at, when you combine any of those characters or even just focus on one team or the other. There's a lot there.
It ties to so many franchises. It ties to the Thing. It ties to
X-Men.
It ties to X-Men. It ties to the Defenders. It ties to the Avengers, substantially to the Avengers. They all were basically honorary Avengers where they were stuck.
Yeah.
During
New Warriors, because I mean that's where Vance Astro comes from. He's a Marvel boy, the original Marvel boy, anyway. I mean, there's a lot there. It's pretty cool. Awesome. So do we want to get into one bit of our news bits here? Because there was a big thing that happened.
Okay,
yesterday.
I think because we're already like 90 minutes in, and we have books to talk about. So let's plan on a 2-hour show, but let's try to get the news and the second books, and let's just really speed through the second books because we also have other stuff to do. So
okay,
awesome. Okay. So one of the things that happened yesterday, Wednesday, the 17th of May. Was that the Eisner Award nominations were released, and there's a lot of good ones. We've got some books that we've talked about here, or some artists and authors that we've talked about here on the show, but also some other good ones. And I just kind of wanted to highlight some of those, just to kind of give us a taste of what we're going to be looking at when the Eisners are awarded in just. Well, gosh, when is SDCC? 2 months, I guess. So one of the big categories here is best continuing series. That usually tends to be a pretty popular category here, and we've got nominated this time around Daredevil, Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil with Marco Caccetto and Rafael de la Torre. We've got The Department of Truth by JT4, James Tynion IV, and Martin Simons. Philadelphia by Rodney Barnes and Jason Sean Alexander. Nice House on the Lake, again, James Tynion IV and Alvaro Martinez Bueno. Nightwing by Tom Taylor, Roberto Redondo. And the She-Hulk series, which I think was a little bit of a surprise to see.
It was,
see there. Not because it's a bad book by any means, but just because, we're really looking at so many great series over the past year. But She-Hulk by Rainbow Rowell, Roger Antonio, Luca Maresca, and Takeshi Miyazawa. What do you guys think about these? I mean, 2 by James Tynion. I'm not surprised because I absolutely love Department of Truth, and I know that Nice House on the Lake has been getting all the kudos over the past couple of years since it started.
James Tynion won best writer last year or in something else. He's a darling of these awards, so I was 0% surprised. I'm personally happy in Philadelphia is in there. I love that book. I think it's excellent. So
Zdarsky's run obviously has had a lot of buzz about it. People have been talking about that for a while now, and of course Tom Taylor, anything he touches.
Like I am suspecting Nightwing will win this.
Interesting.
I'm gonna choose Nightwing just because I think it's the most, from what I understand, it's the most lauded. I personally want Philadelphia to win.
I don't know, boss. Do you have a dog in this fight?
Nightwing.
Yeah.
Nightwing.
Yeah. It's everything it should be.
Yeah. I'm kind of partial to Department of Truth. I just am, because it is a wonderful mindfuck, and it's very, very different from all the other books on this list. I thought that was great. Best limited series. Just going to run through these really quick. Animal Castle by Xavier Dorison and Felix Dalep. I haven't read that one, and I don't know too much about that. Batman One Bad Day, the compilation anthology edited by Dave Wielgos and Jessica Berby. Human Target by Tom King and Greg Smallwood. Miracle Man by Gaiman and Buckingham, The Silver Age. And Superman Space Age by Mark Russell and Michael and Laura Allred. I mean, These were all
I'd love to
ones
see,
that
I would love to see Space Age win.
Yeah, I would
I
too.
do think it's
That would
by
make me
far the
very
best.
happy.
I don't expect that to happen. The Batman One Bad Day. There's some really good ones and there's some really
it's uneven
stories. So and just tonally, it just doesn't. It's not something I would consider a limited series. You know.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Tom King. There's always a nod from somewhere, and I certainly enjoyed a lot of Human Target. But of those choices, like Superman Space Age would be mine, like way out in front.
Tom King's going to win for Love Everlasting, so like he give that one to Mark Russell.
But what's Love Everlasting against?
Let's see. Love Everlasting is up for Best New Series. It's against The Atonement Bell, Public Domain by Chip Zdarsky, Star Trek by Colin Kelly, Jackson Lansing, and Ramon Rosas, and then Traveling to Mars by Mark Russell and Roberto Melli.
Yeah.
So it's gonna.
I don't think there's like big competition there.
No, Love Everlasting is getting high. That's what I'm saying. Like, give the other one to Mark Russell.
There's big competition.
Yeah. Here's a category that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and that's the best graphic memoir. We've got Down to the Bone, Leukemia Story by Catherine Pioli, translated by J.T. Mahoney. We've got Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands, Ducks by Kate Beaton. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth, an autobiographic novel by Zoe Thorogood, and I actually just talked about it, I think, last month or 2 months ago. So Much for Love, How I Survived a Toxic Relationship by Sophie Lambda, and Welcome to St. Hell, My Trans Teen Misadventure by Lewis Hancock, which also I thought was great. It was a wonderful book. I mean, I'm pulling for Ducks on this one, but
I think Ducks has the most notoriety.
Ducks had the biggest push out of all of these books, but they all are so charming.
But also, Ducks' push was very organic. It was a very its profile expansion was something that was very organic.
Yeah. It's also a very heavy book. Physically, it weighs a lot and can totally take out anybody trying to beat them off with any of these.
Just gonna launch it at somebody.
Yeah, just launch it that. I didn't win for But there's some great ones, and of course, let's just go through the usual best writer: Grace Ellis, Flung Out of Space; Tom King with a ton of Batman stuff: Human Target, Love Everlasting, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow; Mark Russell with Traveling to Mars, One Star Squadron, Superman Space Age, and the Incal tie-in Psychoverse. And of course, James Tinney in the fourth, House of Slaughter, Something's Killing Children.
Second Coming isn't mentioned.
It's not mentioned in that.
I noticed that
not
too.
Sure why.
That's interesting.
But I mean, it's part of that. They
My
may not have had.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons. I mean, James Tinney had like I think 6 or 7 titles going.
Billionaire's Island.
Oh. Yeah. And also to round that out, Chip Zdarsky for Stillwater, Daredevil. Obviously, we've got Public Domain and some other things that they did, but. Yeah, I mean that one's it's a tough.
They're all deserving of.
They're all good.
And Tom
we
Taylor
have the best.
Isn't in there.
No.
Interesting.
The other Tom, Mr. King.
Interesting.
We've got best penciler inker or penciler inker team. Sean Alexander from Philadelphia.
Yeah, I was going to say if we're going to go through that because there's different art categories that might.
There's a lot, but I think that one's probably the big one that we see a lot. Alvaro Martinez Bueno for Nice House on the Lake, Sean Phillips for Follow Me Down, Bruno Redondo for Nightwing, and Greg Smallwood for Human Target. I mean, they did great.
I wanted
all those.
But grant me one indulgence. What's the collected edition, reprint edition? What's that category?
Let
me look for that one because that's usually one that I kind of go off on.
While you're looking for that one, I want to go through here because we are a queer podcast. There are some really good queer books that got nominated this year. For best publication for teens, a book that's near and dear to my heart, Heartstopper Volume 4. It got nominated by Alice Oseman. By the way, go watch that on Netflix if you haven't. It's great. In the Best Humor publication, Killer Queens by David Bower and Claudia Balboni got nominated. It was fantastic, and it is legit hilarious. There's a bunch of other ones that there's a lot of queer representation in here. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth is not necessarily a queer per se book, but it's very much got queer themes. It's for Best Graphic Memoir, lots of representation in here this time. Down the list.
And remember, Tinian is bisexual too.
Tinian is bisexual, and so he's well lauded and well nominated.
Yeah. So Bill, your category right there. There's actually two, but I'll look at the one that's archival collection or project for comic books, because there's another one that's separate for strips. Yeah. You've got the Deluxe Jimenez, Fourth Power and Star Conspiracy by Juan Jimenez, with editing by Alex Donahue and Bruno Lassine. Fantastic Worlds of Frank Frazetta, edited by Dan Hansen. Home to Stay, the complete Ray Bradbury EC stories by Ray Bradbury, various, and edited by Fantagraphics.
For Fantagraphics, okay.
Yep, John Michael Catrone edited that. The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror Omnibus. And then finally, Walt Disney's Uncle Scrooge, the Diamond Jubilee Collection by Carl Barks, edited by Chris.
I mainly asked about that category because sometimes there's something you never heard of before. You've never heard of this particular collection before.
Well, I don't think
Bradbury's interesting because the EC would just like do his stories and not credit him. But he was like he was so flattered by how well they were executed that it eventually became like a very friendly relationship. So
that's pretty cool, though.
Yes.
That I would never have expected to see a collection like that coming out at all. So it's good that it's
they have been doing collections that were like artist specific.
Yeah.
From that, so I'm not surprised they did something like this.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's some really cool nominees in here. There's a lot of categories. I really encourage everybody to go and seek out the full list and see if there are any favorites of yours that have made the list there. And again, it doesn't mean, when it's nomination time for any awards, it doesn't mean that everybody else sucked and these are the only good ones. There's a ton of great stuff out there.
They all sucked.
Nothing
else was good.
Everything else was good. Everything was bad except for this. But yeah, I mean, it's great. There's every year, especially in the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we've just had so much.
In fact, these all suck.
A glut.
It's just they're just running for what sucked the least.
I nominate who's not as awful. This guy.
I mean, we're joking, but there's some books on here that got nominated for things I think are legitimately bad, but that's just me. So I'm just like, anyway.
Oh, that's all good. Well, do we want to get into?
I think we should probably just mention a book that we enjoyed that we read this week, and then just revert to the standard because we still have to talk about our nets and our woofs, that kind of stuff. So, so let's just do quickly the books that we got that are current that we enjoyed. Steve, why don't you go first?
I'm not even going to show you the picture of it. I'll just hold up the book. Jinx: A Cursed Life. It's a one shot from the Chilling Adventures sub imprint for Archie, or Archie Horror specifically, and it's about Jinx, who is supposedly the daughter of Satan. Of course, she's the daughter of Satan. It is absolutely just a fun, goofy, great book. The character of Jinx and her best friend Danny are a great pair. Jughead as possessed by Satan is hilarious, shockingly, and also disgusting. But what made me really happy about this is another outing of Mags Versaggio writing Jinx. And she's joined here by Craig Cermak on art, Ellie Wright on colors, and Jack Morelli on letters. Such a fun book. Pick it up. Give it a shot. Even if you haven't read any of the other recent Jinx, Archie horror books, or know anything about her, it's a fun introduction to the character. Archie makes an appearance as well. And it's got a lot of heart to it.
I didn't get that one. I did get The Cult of That Wilkin Boy from Archie Horror, and I'm fascinated by Colin Bunn writing an Archie Universe story.
Yeah, Colin Bunn on that.
Yeah. but I didn't get Jinx, but I get most of those. And the one shots have been
I recommend Jinx.
One shots have been really good. So
Oh, yeah. And the art's great. I think Cermak does a really good job on it. It's fun. It obviously doesn't look like Archie, traditional Archie, but it definitely fits in with the vibe of Archie horror, along with the humor that Mags is bringing to this as well. So,
all right, cool.
Yeah.
Caleb, how about you?
Yeah, so Steve, earlier you mentioned kind of, graphic memoirs, and I'm reading a type of that, but in neat little floppy form. I picked up the first issue of Maple Terrace by Noah Van Sciver, Theft, Lies, and Poverty. In a nutshell, this is Noah Van Sciver writing about his childhood, what it was like, his home life, kind of being a lower middle class, stuffed in a house full of boys who were rough and tumble. His first connections with comics, his kind of loose relationship with his parents, and what that was like. And it's really just about kind of being just lower middle class, and just how he grew up and learning to love these things. Interestingly enough, I mean, because they tap into comics, they talk about, obviously villain tropes. I don't think in real life there's a bigger very few bigger comic book villains than his brother, who actually shows up in this. And he's, for the first time that I've read, is actually contending with his relationship with his brother in comic book form. So I find that interesting, just from a real life aspect. Also, there's a really funny panel in here where they reference the whole book is about him needing Spawn number 5 or something. He goes in and sneaks into his dad's comic books, gets them out, and he's looking at them, and it's all this old stuff. And his dad walks in and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I was looking for the new Spawn." He's like, "No, son, no. Todd McFarlane is for boys. Barry Windsor Smith is for men."
Oh boy!
God, I sent that to all my, like, Craig and all them, just as soon as I could. I thought it was great. So I like this. Obviously, like Noah Van Sciver, he taps into some real life elements. This is very interesting. It's being published by Uncivilized Books. For the price, it's $6. Like it's a steep price for as small of a book as you're getting. But if you're a fan of Noah Van Sciver, it's definitely worth getting it. It's got that type of Noah Van Sciver kind of, or underground cartoony outlaw comics-ish kind of style art. So I dig it.
Yeah, this is one of those books where I've only heard good things.
Yeah,
He's going to be at Heroes Con, so I'm hoping that he's got some for sale on the table. I obviously he should, but I hope I get them before they sell out, because I definitely would love to pick this up from him. I've really enjoyed his work too.
Side note, one thing that's really cool, just kind of speaks to his character. On the very last page, it's like where he could be talking about anything but himself. He's got a list of other books that you should check out, like Ginseng Roots by Craig Thompson, Cartoon Dialectics, Tom Kaczynski, and then Career Shoplifter by Gabrielle Bell.
All of those are great. I'm so happy that he wrote about those.
And
all of those are excellent.
That is such a punk rock thing to do.
Yeah, I thought that was fucking
love
rad.
that. When you have acts like Throbbing Gristle or Crass would, recommend other music on their backs of their records. Yeah.
Check out these other zines. Yeah,
I thought that was super.
Yes, I will.
That's very cool. Yeah, I'm
awesome.
I'm totally in for that. All right, I'm Joe Commercial, so I will go to the book that I want to recommend, and this is part of DC. Steve, you're gonna have to put a graphic up for this because I don't have the book in physical form. I read it in digital form. It's written by Ram V. God help me with the pronunciation of the artist name, Lalit Kumar Sharma. Oh, that wasn't that scary. And this is part of DC's We Are Legends, which is their push for Asian and Islamic diversity in comics. Pacific Islanders, under that umbrella. And what the Vigil #1 deals with, it's essentially gives India a sort of superhero team in a sense, but it's much more deeper than that. So what happens is there's an organization that is very similar to Checkmate in a sense. So you do feel that this is definitely DCU. And there is an operative who's about to retire, and he hands off his responsibilities to this young lady, and she's going to become the official liaison between a governmental operation that is run by Mr. Lightless and this team called the Vigil. And they've some really interesting characters. Dodge is this super fast human being. Seiya had a very sad skin condition, but they were able through science to effectively turn that into a superpower, so he can basically almost Skrull-like kind of take the identity of other people. And the event that starts this all off is there is a shipping vessel off the coast of Thailand that's boarded by pirates. And they send this team to, effectively liberate the crew members that have been captured. But they also have a secret purpose there, in that there is technology on that ship that is too dangerous for people who can't handle it to use. And that basically is what the Vigil is about. And at the very end, we see that the retiree is not in a good situation, and there is somebody who's trying to find out who is Mr. Lightless. So for an introductory issue to a series, I thought it was pretty effective. I haven't read the Spirit World, which is another book that's in this series, and there's a third book that was part of a Free Comic Book Day, and we didn't even talk about Free Comic Book Day, but I will a little bit in my gets. So I definitely recommend this. I think, Caleb, you especially, because I know you like a lot of Ram V's work.
I do. Yeah.
You will like this. And if you do have DC Universe Infinite, you don't even need the Ultra version. They are posting certain Dawn of DC issues for free, the first issues at least, and this was one of them. So I recommend The Vigil.
I will pick it up tomorrow.
Awesome. Okay.
It's in my box.
It's in my box. It's in my
box.
It's in my DCBS box.
What's in the box?
See what you got.
They died so young.
He died so young.
Nothing but covers.
Nothing but cover versions. Okay. So we're going to start wrapping this show up, and another segment that and especially this time because I did mention Free Comic Book Day, so that's like a very good point to get some geekettes. We'll go around and see what we each got. So Steve, do you have a get you can show?
I have a couple little gets that have been sitting around here. As you know, every time that there's a big Marvel movie, when they have a tie-in with a certain fast food franchise, I got to pick up more. And so I've got my, Adam Warlock here with his weird, flingy fist, and of course Cosmo. Now, story with the Cosmo. I actually have two more of them, and Mantis. I have two more Cosmos because they keep giving me Cosmo. I don't know, but those are cool. And then also with Free Comic Book Day, and I'm not going to mention the free comic books because I don't want to take anything from what you guys did. But while I was there in Fort Wayne for Free Comic Book Day and picking out some of those free issues, I did come across a box set of Jeff Lemire's Sentient. And it's a hardcover of Sentient in a box sleeve that you can put on the shelf. It looks really pretty. It's in the other room right now. Looking for a permanent home, but it is gorgeous, and just a great way to experience that. So picked it up. It was a great price. So
nice,
very cool.
Yeah,
okay, Caleb, how about you?
Well, first I need to know if Cosmo is a good dog or a bad dog. I need to.
Cosmo is a good dog. Cosmo is a good dog.
Why did you just say he's a good dog? He's a bad dog. Jeez. Yeah.
So my comic book shop was also they were taking part in Free Comic Book Day, which not only meant that they had really good free comics, and I picked up a couple. They also had a really good sale going on, so I spent a little money. So I'm going to kind of go through these. I got Jeff Lemire's Fish Flies as a free comic book, so super excited to read that. Have not had a chance to yet. Obviously, I picked up the new Conan book now that it's moved over to Titan. Will be the only Titan book I've ever actually bought, so that's interesting.
I have gotten Titan stuff.
Never has collected. Never have.
I have gotten Robotech, Fighting American, the Chimera Brigade, Some foreign. Yeah, even I have gotten Titan books.
Well, me and Conan, baby, we're going into the abyss with Titan, hand in
Interesting.
hand.
I thought there would have been something you would have picked up there. Okay.
I also got On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Tim Snyder and illustrated by Nora Krug.
That's one of the last years. That's from last year.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah. I picked up off the shelf. I didn't grab it last year. I was like,
That's
hey, that
great.
looks interesting.
I'm kicking myself over something about this. I'll tell you about this.
As I throw it across. I also grabbed the Frazetta-verse free comic
Which
book.
is, I grabbed the Frazetta. Apparently, it is very hard to find in some areas of the
Really?
country.
Really?
Yeah,
Really? Oh, that was the first one that I picked up. Love me my Opus Frazetta-verse stuff. It's great.
Also, there is a new Frazetta book that got nominated for Eisner, so that's timely. On the money that I spent, I did grab some back issues. I just want to go through there real quick. Not a ton. You guys know I'm slowly but surely getting a collection of. I want the full run of Marvel Comics Presents. So I grabbed number 154, 142, 130, and then that's all of that. I also picked up some older stuff. Tales to Astonish, some Submariner and Hulk. I got Tales to Astonish number 77 and Tales to Astonish number 97, back from the glory days when comics were 12 cents. I got, not to be outdone by Steve, Royal City hardcover because I did not have that. And then I grabbed
that book. So many tears.
I grabbed the omnibus edition of The Question. This is obviously the Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan. Good stuff. So got a new omnibus. And honestly, just because I'm a nerd, one of the things I'm most excited about, I picked up a new book. And this is American Daredevil, Comics, Communism, and the Battles of Lev Gleason by Brett Dokken. I am super excited about reading this. Not only does it focus on kind of an era that I'm a little bit fascinated by, I think there's a lot of important lessons. And also, Lev Gleason is somebody that comics fans should know. They should just know Lev Gleason. So I'm excited about reading that. And our friend, Dr. Zach Crucy, said it was money well spent. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I want to get that.
Good.
I need to get that. Lev Gleason ties into my regret because one of the books I get as many books as I can with the free comic day because it's free. You're not spending anything. And, there have been times I've discovered books through this, whether it's Johnny Raygun or the stuff of legend, sometimes you really discover gems through this. And you had mentioned Animal Castle, and Animal Castle is one of the free comic book day offerings. That was one of the nominations that Steve talked about. There was a book, though. It was Equilibrium, which was kind of like the Claw. You remember from Project Superpower's public domain character, but it was the Claw fighting Captain Canuck. And I thought, I for sure picked this up last year, but it was one of the books I got shorted by DCBS, so I could have picked it up. It was last year's book, and I'm very sad. But I got a lot of good stuff. I got as many of the free stuff as possible. I think I'm only going to be missing 3 and luckily DCBS actually filled my order, and it seems like everything's in the way. I did get, for the second time in my life, the DC Superhero Stamp album from the mid 70s.
Wow.
You had, you could buy these stamps and then put them in this album. And, this is one of the few completed pages, but you'll see that you got a shiny one, and this is a flash page. Most of the stamp pages, the poor fellow or girl didn't get all of them. I had them all because I was a brat. So I haven't had a version of this in my hand since 1976. So that was one of my gets. And then the other get I want to talk about, we'll go over to the House of Ideas. Again, as Caleb mentions, a lot of the shops, and please support these local shops on Free Comic Book Day. Please do that. Don't just run in and get your freebie. Get something.
Oh, yeah.
And especially get something because they often have great sales. So over to the House of Ideas, I did get the Marvel Legends Kenner Secret Wars style Nova figure. And because he can't be lonely, I also got the Jessica Drew Spider-Woman. And a note about this particular series, it is going on to what they call a hiatus. So the last wave that's out there, which includes Spider-Woman and also Ghost Rider with a vehicle, it looks fantastic. That's the last. That's the last wave they're going to have for some time. So pick those up because usually the last wave are the most difficult to find in terms of numbers. But I just love these retro figures. They're beautiful sculpts.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Beautiful packaging. It wasn't a situation like DC where I get them all, but I've gotten a good number of these, and I'm very pleased with that line.
Cool.
And that's our Geek Gets. All right, we're going to wrap this show up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him, and we do something very similar. We woof at might be a comic book, might be a film, might be a TV program, might be a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or possibly viewer, if you're streaming in, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Mine goes out to a TV show because it's been a couple weeks since I talked about a TV show. But it is the Class of '09, which is an interesting timey-wimey-ish show that's on FX on Hulu about the same class of FBI agents from their original graduation and training to the present day with a major terrorist operation happening to the future where their choices and actions in the past have greatly changed the American landscape and the state of American freedoms as well as policing in the future. And it's a very interesting storytelling method where you bounce back and forth in time with themes that follow each of those individual agents, the same agents, through their changes. It's got an amazing cast. Brian Tyree Henry is in there. Kate Mara's in there. Just a great cast of actors and characters playing multiple versions of themselves at different ages and situations. So totally recommend it. It's on FX on Hulu. You can watch. I think new episodes are every Wednesday. So yeah, check it out.
Nice. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your Woof of the Week?
My Woof of the Week also goes out to a television show, something that is basically like a warm hug. I have been watching the newest season of the Great British Bake Off Junior on Netflix. This is just like the Great British Bake Off, except it's got kids. And it's super fun. They went for a real stretch here, right? They named it Junior. It is really fun. They have a great cast of kids that they get in there. They let them cook. They actually do something different where they split it up. So they follow one group of kids through 4 episodes, bring in another group of kids for 4 episodes, and I guess it culminates at the end. I haven't got there yet, but it's hosted, or at least the judges are not the same judges that you see. It's not Prue and Paul. It's Liam Charles and Ravneet Gill. Both of them are professional pastry chefs or chefs of some sort, I think. Super cool people. At the end of the day, this has got the same charm and the same positivity as Great British Bake Off. It's a competition show for kids where kids come in there and bake. They're not producing the same quality of stuff as what you would see from adults, but they're doing pretty damn good. It's actually very impressive. And at the end of it, when somebody goes home, the kids are quick to support them. In the middle of it, when they're doing their thing and they're all cooking, the kids are all jumping there to help the one that's falling behind and finish their project, man. It's really cool to see that level of positivity and camaraderie in today's world. We're constantly getting bombarded by negativity, especially in America where kids competition things are more cutthroat. It's cool to see the side of it where it's just people being supportive of other people, man. And I need that when I get home at the end of the day. So check that out. It'll warm your spirits.
Yeah, I have to say that when it comes to these competition shows, the ones that I like Bake Off, and Steve's has probably watched every version of Bake Off ever.
Yeah,
since it started.
Yeah.
Now I've seen this. I've seen his collection.
Yeah,
he has.
The South African one is, and the early Australia ones were terrible. But
anyway, I adored the Irish one that you got me.
They're so fun.
And
the later Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah,
I love my New Zealand people.
But I think of other shows that I like the Mole, and the ones I really enjoy is the ones where you're not necessarily pitted against somebody else, but you're just trying to be the best at it.
Yeah,
where they're your actions don't affect anybody else's.
Yeah,
and those ones seems to be the one that I enjoy, and that's probably, I don't know what the other ones are like because I probably couldn't. I don't think I could process kids in competition with each other and backstabbing young rage. That would be kind of shitty. My wolf of the week is also a TV series, and this is a docu series that's airing for 4 episodes. They're all out now on Hulu, and it's Amityville: The Origin Story, and it goes through the history of the Amityville Horror from the initial exposure of the book and the story of the haunting where the Lutz family only lasted 28 days in a house in Long Island. Long Island's factored, you know what? It was Korvac. Korvac did this.
Korvac.
The Korvac horror. But the Lutz family, claimed that there was issues with the house, that was basically demonically possessed house. Was the basis of a huge 1979 film, which has gone on to have a number of completely unrelated franchise stories and films afterwards. But the event where that really put the house on the map at the start was the murder of the DeFeo family by Ronnie DeFeo, where he murdered his parents and his 4 siblings in one night in 1974. It goes through the murders. It goes through the aftermath, effectively, of the notoriety that the film brought the house and Amityville in total. It was very well done. Now, the Amityville Horror was something that scared the shit out of me, / absolutely fascinated me as a kid. When I got my driver's license, one of the first trips I did was out to see the house, because my parents would never do that. I got my way a lot, but that was something they totally would draw the line. And I kind of casually mentioned it when mother said, you won't sleep for 3 weeks, so we're not doing that. But I eventually did it when I was older. So I've always been fascinated by the story, and whether there's any truth to it or not, it's just a fascinating haunted house story. It's the best. And to see it treated in a practically journalistic format was really nice, because most of the Amityville documentaries that have gone before had very, very different agendas. So I highly recommend the Amityville Origin Story on Hulu. That's my wolf of the week.
Very cool.
One of the things about that was how fast. I didn't realize how soon after the murders and after the Lutzes moving in, that everything just sort of snowballed to that film. It was a span of 3 years, 4 years, maybe.
The murders were in 74. The Lutzes moved in December of 75, and were out by early January 1976. And the film came out in 79.
But the book, what about the book from the
early 77?
Gosh,
early 77.
So I mean, if you think about film production and everything, basically, the murders happened, the Lutz family moved in and moved out. The book was written by
Jay
The Conjuring. And then they immediately started the film, and then 1979. So it's just the compressed timeline about these things. Sorry, that's my cat.
And also, if you watch this, I'm going to throw this out. There is a comic book connection to the Amityville Horror, and if people watch it, we'll see. Just write to me and see if you got it. Which is kind of
Superman connection. Superman film connection.
Yeah, but that's obvious. That's so fucking obvious.
Just the actor.
The comic book is a little more oblique. So
yeah.
All right, we're wrapping this one up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, please do so by downloading us through Apple Podcasts, listening to us through Stitcher Radio, and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you joined us through Facebook Live, thank you very much. If you are watching later on YouTube, thank you for watching, and please subscribe and leave a good review. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I don't know what cover songs are because I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion, not a cover song. And we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Woof.